Hi, welcome to episode 3 of A Star Was Born. I'm Tommy Thompson. I'm talking about my career with the Marshal Service. The last episode we had, we talked about my origin story, or what led me up to applying and then getting hired. And I left off when I got sworn in as a deputy marshal on December 27th, 1983. The importance of that, I'll talk about in just a second. I found a couple of things relating to that. Let me get my glasses here. So this is a copy of the actual appointment that that I signed and a magistrate judge signed in Atlanta the morning of December 27th, 83, when I got sworn in. I remember, if I recall, I was sworn in with a woman named Linda Ballou. Her maiden name was Ayers back then. She ended up going down to Miami to start her career after spending some time in Atlanta. And I was sworn with a fellow named W.S. Robertson, who was assigned, I believe, to Springfield, Illinois, to start. And then he ended up working with me in Atlanta later on. So let's go ahead and get started with the questions. Mark, my son Mark is here as usual. Go ahead.
Tell us about your first day with the U.S. Marshals.
All right. So as I said, I had worked till early in the morning on my last job, and then I showed up about 8:30 in Atlanta, wearing my suit, not knowing what to expect. Uh, we got sworn in as deputy marshals. Took the oath of office before a federal judge. Got sworn in. I'm sure they found us a place to sit, and we met everybody. Got a tour of the office. You know, the basic things for your first day, as I recall. I don't remember a whole lot about it, but it was a total change from my previous job. Just night and day from being assistant manager with the restaurant.
As a brand new deputy U.S. Marshal, did you have a badge and a gun?
So they got me a badge. I don't can't remember how long it took to get there, but I did get a badge. It was like this. Whoops, excuse me. It was like this one. I showed it before, except our badges back then flipped this way. This one flips this way, so we would show it to people. These badges flipped long ways. And the reason they did that was because the deputies would slide them in their coat pocket with one end in the coat pocket and the badge hanging out. And that's how they would wear them to court, so they could see what it looked like uh, that they were deputies when they were in the courtroom. And then later on, we got these badges right here, like this, where we just put in our coat pocket. Now, of course, I dropped that in the video, and I'm gonna have to glue the badge back on. But that's live TV, I guess. That's how it goes. As far as a gun, they took me out not long after I got sworn in. Within the next week or so, they took me to the firing range over at the federal prison in Atlanta, and we shot a course of fire. I think it was about 60 rounds with a revolver. A Smith and Wesson Model 66 is what deputy marshals carried back then, 2.5 inch. And I had shot it. I shot a handgun maybe 2 or 3 times in my life. You know, not very much at all. I had no training. This course of fire started from the 3 and worked back to the 25. Some of them entailed drawing and firing from hip level, shooting from a distance, and I failed the course. I did not pass. So I did not. They did not issue me a gun when I was there in Atlanta, which really it was a good thing because I had no law enforcement training. I was a had been a restaurant manager. I didn't need to be carrying a gun trying to enforce the laws without going to the academy first. So really, it was a blessing in disguise when I didn't pass. Some of the other people who came into the marshal service who had been law enforcement officers probably didn't have any trouble with that, but I did.
So when did you go to the academy?
I went to the academy the first week in March of 1984. So what happened was some people, when they started that day on the 27th of December, showed up in where they were going to do their job. So theoretically, they could have told me, hey, you need to show up in San Diego. That's where I was assigned and get sworn in. I would have had to stay there until I was scheduled to go to the academy and then travel all the way back down to Brunswick, Georgia. It's on the coast between Jacksonville and Savannah. But they let me stay there because my son Ryan, like we talked about last time, was brand new, and my wife is from Atlanta, Nancy, and so they let us stay there until I got out of the academy. I worked in Atlanta for about 10 weeks, I guess, before I went down to the training academy.
What was the hardest part about starting out?
Well, I've always been able to talk to people. That's what I do. That's what I did as a restaurant manager. That's what I did as a college student, as a Sigma Chi in college. Just learned how to talk to people. I could always relate to people. Really, really enjoyed it. So when I get to the marshal's office, part of what they had me do, since I didn't carry a gun, sometimes I helped out in the cell block processing prisoners. I didn't know any criminals. I didn't know how to talk to people that were accused or convicted of crime. So that was the most awkward thing for me. How do you talk to them? I learned pretty quickly, and it carried with me to this day. They're just people like the rest of us. Some of them are mean, some of them aren't, some of them messed up, some of them deliberately did it. But as long as I was straight with them, didn't lie to them, and just talked like a person, just like I'm talking to you, that was what I learned during those 10 weeks waiting to go to the academy. One story from that, I was in there helping process prisoners, so we had a guy that would sit in the control room and watch all the cameras and everything, and work the doors. And I was in there processing a prisoner. So I was sitting in the room with a prisoner. And the particular one I remember was a guy named Harold Rosenthal. Now, Harold Rosenthal was probably in his 40s, maybe early 50s. He looked old to me, but I was young. But Rosenthal had been a member of a group called the Dixie Mafia. So he was a drug dealer, criminal, crook, whatever he was charged with. I can't remember. But white guy, kind of unassuming, but he was a big shot in the organization. He was notorious. Of course, I'd never heard of him before. So I'm going through the stuff, writing down the answers to his answers to the questions. So one of the questions I asked was just a standard question. I said, so do you have any bank accounts or money? And he looked at me, he said, wouldn't you like to know? So I just kind of moved on. I realized then that it wouldn't have been in his best interest to answer my question anyway. But a lot of times, we have to ask those questions. A lot of times they wouldn't tell us the truth anyway.
So what else did you learn besides that?
I learned from a fellow named Arnold Perkins, who was a deputy in the office there. Arnold was an interesting fellow. He also did investigations for headquarters part time. It was like a collateral duty, is what they called it. Arnold did probably equal employment opportunity investigations, if I remember right. But Arnold, probably based on that, he thought documentation was very important. So he told me I should write down everything that I do, just kind of almost like a journal, not quite, but keep track of everything I do during my career in case I need to know. And so I did for a long time. And a lot of what I'm going to be talking about over the next however long we do this will come directly from calendar books where I wrote down dates and names and people I worked with and all that. But that's another thing I learned from Arnold. I also learned that it was good. I really enjoyed working Monday through Friday instead of all the weekends too. And one thing I didn't mention was I found my second or third pay stub from when I started back in late 83. The base pay for the period ending January 21st of 1984, I'd been on about 3 or 4 weeks now, maybe 4 weeks. Base pay was $13,837. That was the yearly pay. Now, I looked it up, and in today's dollars, that's about $47,000. So it's okay. It's a decent pay in parts of the country, you know. Now I had to take that salary later on, and I'll talk about that later. But I had to take that salary and go to San Diego, where I made the same amount of money out there, where things were more expensive. But that was that the it was a good job, and now it's a whole lot more, and we'll get into that as we go. But it was that's what I started making, was about less than 14,000 when I was working there in Atlanta.
What are some memorable experiences?
Okay, well one that I remember, I would, since I didn't carry a gun, I would help the deputy sometimes, maybe give him a ride to the airport. So we took this a deputy named Buchanan, and I can't remember who his partner was, and they had a prisoner they had to take. Now back then in the 80s, we flew a lot of prisoners on commercial airlines. So I went to the Atlanta airport with them. My job was to stay with them till they got on the plane with the prisoner. They were flying a prisoner on a commercial airline. So the way it worked was usually they'd have something, the prisoner would be in handcuffs with a waist chain. They would drape something over his hands most of the time where he could, you couldn't tell he was handcuffed, try to be a little subtle, and then board him on the plane, usually sit in the back and all that. But in the meantime, we're waiting before they're boarded. So we're in the terminal there. Now we didn't have to go through security like you do now. We just walked back to where the gate was. They presented their ticket information, whatever, got tickets for them and their deputy, and I'm sitting there with one of them while the other one's doing that. And the guy's handcuffed. Now they'd taken the leg irons. Usually there's leg irons when they would transport them too, so they couldn't run. Well, they had to take those off in the airport because it was just conspicuous. So they'd taken the leg irons off. So one of the deputies, the other deputy, decided to go. He wanted to go get something to drink, go to the restroom or something. So he left the prisoner with Deputy Buchanan and me, and he went off to where he was going. So, but uh, I think that's what we called him, but Buchanan, I remember his name. He tells the prisoner, he said, "Hey, said if you take off running," he said, "I probably won't shoot you. I'm not that way." He said, "But my partner over there, he'll shoot you in a heartbeat. I just want to make sure you know that." And the guy's eyes kind of got big, and of course he didn't try anything, but he was messing with him, and I don't know if he was also kind of showing off for me a little bit, but that was kind of interesting how he dealt with it. I took a deputy named Jane Webb, a real nice lady, to the airport one time. She was going on a special assignment for about 3 weeks. That's how it usually worked. So she wanted to stop at a Kroger on the way to the airport. So I take her to the Kroger. I'm sitting in the car. She comes back out. She had a loaf of bread and some peanut butter and put them in her bags. And she said that she was going to save money while she was traveling. She got money for meal money, but she figured if she ate cheap, she could pocket the money. So that's another thing I learned. And also, what I did, I spent a lot of time. The Marshal Service manual was 3 volumes, 3 big binders about this thick, and I read the whole manual during that time as well. And that really helped me when I got down to the training academy later on and taking tests. So those were the things I learned: what deputies did, the pace of the office. Of course, every marshal's district had a different pace, but I did learn how things worked in Atlanta.
What else did you have to do to prepare for the academy?
Well, I had to, like I said, I read the manual. Had to make sure I was in shape because I needed to be in shape down there. I mean, we didn't have a workout place there that I had access to. So I just kind of observed, got ready. A lot of the deputies told me what the academy was going to be like. They really tried to help me, and I appreciate that. And when I got ready to go down there, they told me, my bosses told me that if I traveled to the academy in my own vehicle, that the marshals would have to pay me. They'd pay me mileage to go down to the academy, so me cents a mile, whatever it was. But then they would also have to pay me by regulation mileage to go from the academy out to San Diego, California, which was over 2,000 miles. And so I did learn that, and that's why I took my car down to the academy when it was time to go. Okay.
All right.
Is that it? Is that all the questions? Well, let me go ahead and say a couple more things then before we wrap up. It was a very interesting time. It was a total time of total transition for me. I was going into a career that I never thought I would go into, but I was excited. I was wide-eyed. I was just ready to go, ready to go to the academy. My son Ryan was a little bitty dude. It did put a hardship on my first wife, Nancy, being stuck for those 3 months that I was going to be gone. I did get to come home a couple weekends. We'll talk about that next time. But she was stuck with Ryan while I was down there training, getting ready to take her off to the West Coast. So that was a big deal as well. And of course, I missed my family while I was down there too. But I had to adapt. One of the things I had to adapt was getting downtown Atlanta. I lived in Clarkson, Georgia, and I would walk to the end of the street, catch the bus for 60 cents. It would take me to the nearest subway station, uh, usually off Ponce de Leon. I'm trying to think of the name of it, on the east side. Then I'd transfer to the subway, ride downtown, right by the Federal Building. Time to go, 60 cents, get on the subway, ride back out, catch the bus. Or if I'd driven my car to the train station, I would get in my car and then come home. So I had to save money because we weren't making much money either. So I had to do that too. So it was a big adventure, and I really appreciate the people in Atlanta, how much they helped me get me ready to go down there. I hope you stick with us. There's a lot more. There's lots and lots of stories from the training academy. Probably take up more than one episode as we go along. Those will be the next ones. Uh, Hit like. Let me know if you like this. Subscribe. Just so you'll get notified next time. But it's all getting ready for 29 years of wearing the star. And what I didn't say the first time was that around 1989, yeah, when I was still in San Diego, we officially named this America's Star. So that's what the Marshal Service brags about, the star as America's Star. Of course, that goes along with our title, "The Star Was Worn." Thank you. We'll see you next time.